Going live, going live, going live. All right, let's just see how good the blessed audio is. Do-do-do-do. Can I hear myself? Can other people hear me? All right, audio is coming on through, at least pretty fine on my end. Fantastic. Okay. So, wow, no one else is here. This is perfect, absolutely perfect. You want to know why? Because now I can quickly take a bite of some food. I've been so busy today. I am completely behind on so many things, eating being one of them. So I have my dinner right here. Mm, delicious soup. A German recipe that the family calls frische Suppe, fresh soup. And it's just meat, vegetables, noodles, potatoes. Oh, it's so good. Mm. Alrighty. Greetings, everyone. I see some people showing on up. Hi there, ISO. Ruben showed up early, so did Tarpic. And yeah, so hope everyone is having a good evening. And I will quickly lay out what we're going to be doing for tonight. We are going to, at least I will be, talking about how amazing Dune Part 2 was, as well as addressing the art of adaptation. Which might be a little bit rich for someone like me to talk about because I'm just a novice author right here. But there is something that I've seen a lot of people online like really complaining about. And after having seen the movie and seeing the scene that they're complaining about, I'm like, okay, guys, let's take a step back here. I don't think this is as awful as you're making it out to be. And we'll see what you guys think about it. But of course, there's also some stuff to catch up with for the weekly anime, other things to talk about, whatever you guys have on your minds, story writing, and the likes. Well, fun update from the life of Lars. I just finished the rough draft yesterday for a new book. Woohoo! And now we'll soon begin the really long editing process. Yay for me. So, let's see here. Well, we wait for more people because I think it'd be fun to talk Dune when there's a few more people around. So that way, more people can hear me pontificate and complain about other people's complainings. I'm going to quickly swap the video right here to some game footage. And I want to talk about where we're going to be going in the month of March. So February has concluded, talking about the month of love, all of the videos that were done to look recently at toxic relationships. Granted, that's normally not the kind of thing that you want to talk about in the month of Valentine's, but I thought it'd be a good idea to finally address the place that toxic relationships can play, should play, have played, and unfortunately sometimes really do play in fiction. So we'll be giving that a rest. Next February we'll discuss romance from a different angle. But for March, one of the things that I will be doing is I will finally be getting around to making that video about making magical academies. Ooh, that one's going to be fun too. That one's also going to be really long to do. And I also have a video idea that I am going to be trying out, and I want to see how people react to it. It's going to be a little bit more on the creative side rather than on the review, analysis, and writing advice side of things. So that's going to be, that's definitely going to switch things around. And let's see here. Ooh, you know what? So I'm right now going back and forth between what I want to do for March 14th, because March 14th is White Day. And after having talked a lot about White Day while reviewing The Dangers in My Heart, I kind of feel like I have to do something for White Day that's White Day related, but it's also Pie Day. And I'm looking at one of the books I published, Notice Me Send Pie, and I'm like, oh man, I really need to do a video to advertise that book because I haven't done a whole lot to advertise it, which is my bad. It's a great book. It's perfect for Pie Day. It's also kind of good for White Day because it's a romantic comedy, and it's just so funny and fluffy. It's the kind of thing that I feel like a lot of people, if they just need to just kick back with a funny story that's going to make them laugh, make them cringe at teenage awkwardness, this is absolutely the book that you need in your life. And funny enough, so this is one of those instances where when you think about it, you're like, okay, how should I actually take the feedback that I got? I shared the book with one of my nieces, asking her advice on the book, what she thought of it, and she's like, I hate it. This is way too realistic. This is way too close to the way things actually are in high school. I'm like, yes, perfect. I wrote it exactly the way it's supposed to be. But that was also a negative review. So what do you do with it? I say I'm going to use that as a positive and say it is indeed a fairly accurate book, despite it being really ridiculous. Notice Me Send Pie. So yeah, let me know if you want me to actually tackle both videos, a White Day video and a Pie Day video, or if I should actually just focus on one or the other, either doing a White Day video or a Pie Day video. So things to contemplate for the near future. And if all goes well, I will have a rant out about Avatar: The Last Airbender next week, because I've finished watching the live action adaptation for Avatar: The Last Airbender, and oh boy, I have thoughts. I will at least applaud them for definitely putting a good bit of budget into that movie. And you can see it in some of the scenes and some of the sequences. It's definitely there. And I like that we're getting a bunch of new and upcoming actors and actresses to play the different parts, because I am a big proponent for giving new actors and actresses a chance, because that's the only way that we're going to replace legends like Denzel Washington, Morgan Freeman, Ben Affleck, and the likes. I mean, those are at least people that I enjoy. But the only way that we're going to get good actors and actresses again is if we give newbies a chance with some fun material. And really, what's better than Avatar: The Last Airbender, arguably the best cartoon of all time? And as Iso says, at least it was better than the last live-action Avatar. Yes, it was. And there are definitely things that I think that it did well. I especially like what they did with Fire Lord Ozai, making him a far more complex character. I really like the route that they went there. I also like how he played his children off of each other. That was really fun to see. And I think that they got good actors for Aang and for Sokka. Like, Sokka sounded the part. And I think that if they could just help him emote a little bit more, he would be Sokka. And I'm going to say that the guy that they got to play Aang really got into the role. Unfortunately, the script did not favor Aang at all. So there's some good things there, but also plenty of bad to talk about. So that'll be the rant for next week. All right. So now that I've pontificated on, I rambled on for nearly 10 minutes here, and you can watch me embarrassingly get stomped by two of the Night Riders right here. Let's get away from such embarrassment. And let's talk about Dune. So I will be honest with everyone up front right here. I will be talking some spoilers. But then again, this is based on a property that has been out there for decades now. We're long past the spoiler bits. And basically all of Dune was spoiled to me before I even seen the movie or even had heard about the books. thanks to other people. So I am now paying the action forward. So, brief overview for those of you who don't know the story of Dune. Definitely the newest movies for Dune are absolutely worth watching. It follows the fall of House Atreides and the young man who becomes its new duke, Paul Atreides, in this massive game of the Game of Thrones, but in space. Paul's family is sent to the desert planet of Arrakis, which is a very hearty wink and nod towards the nation of Iraq, which has the spice that allows for interstellar travel. Without the spice, there can be no traveling across the universe, and thereby humanity would die across the vastness of space without spice. Just like most humanity needs oil in order to survive. And it's not just for our cars and our planes, but so much of what we do today requires oil. So without oil, humanity wouldn't survive today. Within Dune, humanity doesn't survive without the spice, which is at Arrakis. So they're sent to Arrakis, but it's all this big plot to corner the Atreides family on Arrakis, and then the Emperor, working with a rival house, the Harkonnens, will then invade the planet, kill the Atreides family, and be done with it. And it's all part of an even grander plot by this cult of witches that tries to control the universe behind the throne. And in the first movie is all about the fall of House Atreides. Paul goes into the desert and meets the Fremen, the natives of this planet. And in the second movie, he learns their ways. He becomes a leader. He's been prophesied that he will be their Messiah. However, he doesn't actually want to take on that role. And for a good part of the second movie, Paul doesn't want anything to do with being this false Messiah. He knows it's a false prophecy because it was put there by the Bene Gesserits, this cult of witches that controls all of the various houses and powers behind the universe. So they have set this all on up because they're looking to basically create a new royal lineage that they can then control and that everyone will be absolutely enamored with. And Paul Atreides is one of their many candidates to be that kind of king. So in this movie, Paul is trying to reject the prophecies. He's trying to shun what the Bene Gesserits are intending for him to do. And he's going to fight against the Harkonnens. He's going to get revenge. He wants to free Arrakis from the Harkonnen family and from the Emperor. And he falls in love with Chani, one of the Fremen women. And everything at first seems to kind of be going the way that it should until the Fremen just start winning too many battles. So the Harkonnens now start bringing real firepower to Arrakis to crush the Fremen. Meanwhile, his mother, with some funky voodoo, thanks to this elixir called the Water of Life, begins to see even further through the magic of spice. And she begins manipulating her son to back him into a corner where he will accept this false Messiah identity, and he gets pushed to not just be this false Messiah, but to now become a vengeful Messiah. Not only now will he assume this mantle and lead the Fremen, but he's going to do it to get revenge, and not simply get revenge on the Harkonnens and on the Emperor. He intends to bring war to the entire universe and conquer it and bring it all under his banner. That is the second movie, and the second movie leads up to him finally declaring war on the rest of the universe and unleashing this army of millions of devoted, fanatical Fremen followers who think that he is their Messiah. And he just unleashes them on the universe to wipe out all the other noble houses, and he will reign from Arrakis as the one who controls the spice. Therefore, he controls the universe. That's where it all ends. And that's basically the Book of Dune, which has been out, I believe, since the very early 60s. In fact, it was released in little serials that you could read in magazines back in the 50s even. So fun stuff right there. Now then, to address a couple of things. Number one, this movie is awesome. It is so gorgeous. Like, if you're looking at the footage that I have right here from the trailers, let me just tell you this. That doesn't do it justice. And I know everyone's like, oh, you're going to have to pay to go to an IMAX screen. Where I live, the nearest IMAX screen is like a dump. The people at that theater do not take care of that particular IMAX screen. It is dingy, it is sticky, it smells bad in there. So I just went to another theater that doesn't have any IMAXs, but is way nicer quality. Watched it on a regular screen, and it is still gorgeous. The music, the acting, the I will say it's the fight scene. If the final battle in the movie had gone on for as long as the Siege of Minas Tirith in The Return of the King, I would say that the final battle would actually be on par with the Siege of Minas Tirith from The Lord of the Rings. It is fantastic. It's got strategy, it's got action, it's got these great effects, great acting. It's so dang beautiful, and it's set up so well. The movie is a triumph on so many levels, and it's definitely one that I highly recommend watching. Now then, there is one scene in particular that I've been seeing tons of people just tear into. And then after they tear into it, they're all like, isn't it so nice to have nerdy debates like we used to have in the 90s? And from what I have observed, from what I have seen from all these people having these quote unquote debates, they're not debates at all. It's become an echo chamber of nerds on the internet. And I mean, I'm speaking as a nerd on the internet. It's become this echo chamber of we want things done a particular way. If it isn't done that way, it isn't right. And I've watched over the course of this week as people who got to see the early premiere for the movie came back and were all like, this movie is amazing. It's brilliant. It could easily be the movie of the year. But they said, but there's one part I don't like. And then the next day, they're like, you know what? The movie would be all right if it wasn't for this one scene. And by the end of the week, they've made a mountain out of a molehill where these people who, after they got out of the movie, are like, it's amazing. Everyone should go see it. Are like now like, nah, you know, if you don't want to see this movie, you don't have to. It's not that great. The first half is cool, but the second half just sucks. And they say it all comes down to this one scene. So here's the spoiler. The one scene that they say ruins the whole movie is when Chani watches Paul Atreides take the princess of the universe as his bride. She gets angry. She leaves him while the armies of Arrakis march off to commit genocide across the universe, and she escapes on a worm. And everyone's really upset about it because Chani, who's played by Zendaya in the book, is absolutely enamored with Paul. Even though she's only a concubine to him within the story, she is his true love. She is absolutely enamored with him. She's absolutely loyal to him. They have a very strong relationship. Whereas here in this adaptation, their relationship is not as strong. Chani is already established very early on in the second movie to be a skeptic of Paul. She does fall in love with him. She actually really loves him. But when she realizes that he is becoming this false messiah, and then especially when he becomes the vengeful messiah, she says, nope, I've had enough. I am noping out of this because you are no longer the man that I fell in love with. As a result, I can't do this anymore with you, Paul. I have to leave. And so leave she does. And people are like, no, that's not Chani from the books. That's not okay. And from that one scene alone, they've begun to say this movie is woke, showing that this woman is pushing against the men and overthrowing the system. And after having seen the movie, and I've seen other people say that this movie like shreds into the southern states of the United States of America, and that it's actually against Christians. Slow your rolls, everyone. Did we actually watch the same movie? This movie is so far from Christianity. It's actually got way more in common with Islam, and the Islamic elements within the movie are beautiful. It is so well done. It's actually far more reminiscent. The story and the way that they portray it is actually far more reminiscent of the rise of the Prophet Muhammad in creating the first Islamic state, and then spreading Islam both by the word and by the sword, which that's just history right there. Take it for what you will. And it is an incredible story, both historically and what you see here on the screen. So any comment about that this movie is against Christianity, I already am like, nope, and just toss that on out. I don't know where you guys came from. But let's talk about what here was done with Chani. And this right here, this is the difficulty in adaptation. Any adaptation of another property, whether it be an adaptation of a manga into an anime, an adaptation of a book into a cartoon or live action, or like what we've seen from the cartoon of Avatar The Last Airbender into an adaptation in live action, you as the person who is creating this adaptation, it is incumbent upon you to use this medium of whatever it is, whether it be animation or live action or a book or what have you, it is incumbent upon you to use that medium to its fullest to explore the story properly. You want to hold true to the canon. You don't want to go off the farm because that just ruins it. You don't want to do that. But within the canon, within your understanding of the story, you want to use your medium, in this case film, to bring out the most that you can of that story. So adapting the book Dune into a live action movie. Really, Dune is so huge, it's so complex, it would work better as a show, but that's my opinion right there. If you're going to adapt it into these movies, they have to choose what they're going to adapt and what they aren't. Some of the things that are different here in the movies as opposed to the books. Paul is supposed to have a child who gets killed. That didn't happen. Paul has a sister who's supposed to be born. That hasn't happened yet in the movies. And then the big one that all these people are complaining about, Chani no longer being enamored and absolutely 100%, 1000% in love with Paul. Those things have been changed. Now then, the thing with Paul's sister being born, I actually really like how they handled not having her around here in the movie. Paul not having a child with Chani, I think that would have been excellent to have here in the movie, especially if they were setting up for Chani and Paul to go their separate ways at the end of the movie, showing that they had a kid, that they were able to consummate that love, have something so precious between them, have a family, that family's then torn apart. That would have been an excellent catalyst for helping show why Chani ends up the way that she does. But I believe that the reason why the director and the writers changed Chani's character is because they needed a surrogate for the audience. And I'll explain what I mean by that here after I've waffled all about that. I'll explain what I mean after I address two of the things I've just been put here into the chat. Thank you, guys. From ISO, I understand how they would think that with a false messiah and all, but I, a Christian, disagree with this movie is against Christianity statements. Yeah, watch the movie. The movie is fantastic. And then I think whatever your religious denomination or lack thereof is, there's actually a whole lot of great commentary that this movie can give on how religion has been both used for good and ill throughout history. Because some of the Fremen who are very deeply religious are good people who get taken advantage of by people who misuse these prophecies. And even prophecies that in this case we learn are fake, some of those prophecies give people hope, and that hope is what actually empowers Paul Atreides to actually win. Without that hope, without what the Fremen bring to the table with their faith, Paul would never be able to fight the Harkonnens and the Emperor at the same time and win. He needs that element of faith. And so there's a deep discussion to be had there. And I've actually been fortunate enough to actually have those discussions with other nerds, just not out here on the internet, but in person. And it's been incredible, some of the discussions that we've had, comparing history, comparing different religions, and what's done in fiction with it. Great stuff. Even if we don't agree, having actual discussions, that's what we want. From Rubens, I can't believe I was the first to comment and the last to arrive to watch the actual live. Hey, Rubens, it happens, but it's good to have you here. After all the movie is based on a book, and there are a lot of books with religious themes. That's hardly any reason to be offended by them all. Exactly, exactly. And so many different authors have their own takes on religion, and it's actually, in my personal opinion, it's great to get other people's perspectives on religion, because whatever your religious identity or lack thereof or opinion on religion is, that's fine. It's great to know what other people believe and what they think, because it allows you to communicate with them. You find that common ground, and you're able to establish some fantastic friendships. Some of the people that became best friends of mine at different times in my life absolutely had different beliefs than I do. And that's okay. In fact, that's fantastic. Now then, coming back to the story right here. So, when I say that Chani has been changed into a surrogate for the audience, what I mean by that is that in many cases, when people are reading a book or when they're watching a movie or watching a show, there are certain heroes or villains that they attach themselves to, where they're like, ooh, I identify with this person. I really like who this character is. This character, I can see myself as them, or they're doing things, even if I don't see myself in any of these characters, I can see things that they're doing, that they're saying, that I agree with, that I connect with. So really, I'm now rooting for Paul Atreides, or I'm rooting for Lady Jessica, I'm rooting for Chani. Well, the Dune, the entire story is about how a young man basically falls from grace and becomes this false and vengeful messiah. Basically, he becomes a villain. Now then, granted, we can say that he is doing good because he is exterminating all of these corrupt houses and he's bringing freedom to the people of Arrakis. And there's good things that he does, but he does a lot of these good things in a bad roundabout way. And he definitely, as a person, loses his sense of his better self. The audience right here, how many people are willing to sit through and watch a story of the hero from the first movie who they're like, yeah, you go, guy, you get your revenge, you save the day, you're awesome, Paul, and then watch him become the villain of the whole thing? How many people would then be willing to watch the next installment? How many people are willing to spend 6 to 9 hours to watch that story? Now, the counter to my point right there would people say, "Ooh, Darth Vader," but we already knew about Darth Vader thanks to the Star Wars episodes 4, 5, and 6. People who went on that journey came to learn that Darth Vader was Anakin Skywalker, Luke Skywalker's father, and that he was redeemed. He was brought back to the light side of the Force. And so the prequel stories, the prequel episodes of Star Wars shows us how we get to episode 4, giving us the full background, the full saga of Anakin Skywalker to Darth Vader and then back again. And it becomes a hopeful story because we know what's going to happen with Anakin. And we know that Vader will be redeemed. If you're going into Dune, and granted, most people have not read Dune or watched the early adaptations of Dune, they are coming in blind and have no idea about the story. They don't know what's supposed to happen with Paul Atreides. So they're watching their hero slowly become the villain. And there's one more movie left, the Holy War, where the Fremen are going to go out and conquer the universe in the name of Paul Atreides. So how many people are going to come back 2 to 3 years from now when the third movie's released to watch the guy who they rooted for as the hero become the full-fledged villain? Maybe not that many people. And I think that the directors and the writers looking at Dune were all like, Paul is the main character of Dune. And that was what's always been intended. That's the way it will be. But he does become the villain. So how do we encourage people to stick around for all 3 movies? What if we create another character? Or what if we made another character more sympathetic to the tendencies of the audience? Chani. We will make Chani the skeptic. Chani will become the voice and the surrogate for those in the audience who are against Paul, while those who are for Paul will be there. They'll be watching Paul do all of his things throughout all 3 movies, and boom, there you have it. And now we can satisfy both sides of the audience and everyone in between with this diverse cast of characters and their different personalities. And I believe that that right there is the creative choice made to make Chani so wildly different than how she is in the book. And once I get what Rubens has written right here, I'm going to give you guys another example of how this was actually done in a movie that's almost universally acclaimed as one of the best adaptations of all time. So Rubens, last time a Brazilian author made a really religious book was in 1840 during the Separatist Wars. There are 10 of those. Let's say he called the Southerners not so great people with religious terms, and the book was banned. I wonder why. And what I remember, the author died at the Battle of Porto Alegre in 1844, but because he never signed the documentary, the thing was lost and no one knows who he was, but clearly he was angry. But nothing official, as the book was banned in 1912 for being way too pro-imperial. Ah, that's interesting right there. Yeah, if you're going to get overly religious or overly offensive in a book, be prepared for your book to be banned. That's just going to happen in any country. I mean, me personally, I'm not for banning books. If a book has been written, it should go on out there and people can make a choice for themselves if they should read it. That's my take. But so here is an example that for these people who are complaining about Chani, I know for a fact because I've listened to these guys so often and interacted with them that they absolutely love the Peter Jackson adaptations of The Lord of the Rings. And I do as well. Watching the Peter Jackson Lord of the Rings trilogy for me is almost a spiritual experience because it's fantasy on the big screen done so beautifully well. But as someone who has forgotten more about the world and works of J.R.R. Tolkien than anything that you will see up in Amazon's Rings of Power, I know so much of what was changed from the books to the movies. And there are so many things that I would like to have seen in the movies that weren't put in there. Most people jump to Tom Bombadil. And I will tell you, as a fan of the books, as a fan of Lord of the Rings, you can remove Tom Bombadil and nothing is truly lost. The one thing that is kind of lost by not including the whole side plot with Tom Bombadil is how the hobbits get kidnapped by the Barrow Wraiths and how they are then taken into the Barrow Downs to be sacrificed to Sauron. And when Tom Bombadil saves the hobbits, one of the things that he gives them are these cursed daggers that are meant to, or not exactly cursed, but more like blessed daggers that are meant to actually kill the undead. And that blessed dagger that he gives to Merry is used to stab the Witch King in the knee, bringing him down, allowing Eowyn to stab him in the face and kill him. Without that little side story right there, you don't have Merry where he needs to be with the right thing he needs in order to help defeat the Witch King. Now then, the way that they did it in the movie, that's fine and everything, and I'm not going to throw a fit that Merry doesn't have one of the Barrow Down blades to stab the Witch King in the knee with. Stabby, stabby. I can understand why it's not there in the movie because it'd be such a long side plot that ultimately you don't need to appreciate the rest of the story. Tolkien wrote about Tom Bombadil because Tolkien loves writing poetry. Tom Bombadil is all about singing and poetry. And learning about Tom Bombadil is a chance for the hobbits and for the reader to learn more about the vast history of Middle-earth and all of these different elements. So that's why it's there in the book. It's not necessarily needed in the movie for the movie to be enjoyed. So the movie's already changed up a whole lot. Everyone agrees that was needed, and for the most part, the vast majority of Tolkien fans, the Lord of the Rings fans, love the live action adaptation. So these people, what would they say today if we got the Lord of the Rings trilogy today in 2024, and rather than getting Glorfindel to come and save Frodo and the other hobbits from the ring wraiths after Frodo's been stabbed on Weathertop, they suddenly get Arwen. These people would probably be pitching a fit Because why do you not have Glorfindel here? He is the guy who helped save the elves who fought in Gondolin, saved them from a Balrog as the armies of Morgoth overran Gondolin. Why isn't Glorfindel here? He must be here because Glorfindel isn't here. Oh, this is not a good adaptation. That is effectively what would happen. The reason why Peter Jackson removed Glorfindel and put Arwen in his place is because in order to sell the Lord of the Rings trilogy movies to a wider audience, they expanded on the love story between Aragorn and Arwen. That love story is not very present in the books, but in the movies, it's all over the place. The love that Aragorn has for Arwen motivates him. The love that she has for him empowers him and sustains her as she gives up her immortality. It's this really beautiful aspect that the books didn't have. And I love that was expounded upon. I love that was added in, because I think that not only did that make the trilogy more accessible to a wider variety of people, but it really helps to build on the character of Arwen, which is really important for Aragorn's character, and it brings out even more depth to Aragorn's character. And it came at the cost of, albeit a really, really awesome elf, but an elf that wasn't needed to truly progress the plot along. He could have been swapped out for anyone else. The cartoon version of Lord of the Rings even does the same by actually swapping out Glorfindel with Legolas. But it just in the live action trilogy, it just works so much better with Arwen. So a creative choice was made to change how the story was done in order to make the story more accessible to a wider audience of people. And it worked. And when I look at how Dune 2 ends and what they did with Chani, for me, what I see happening here is I see a creative choice to try to make the story more accessible to a wider audience, to get people thinking, to have people think that they've got a character they can project onto, so that way they will come back for the third movie and enjoy it. We will only know how well this artistic change works when we see the next movie. And if it doesn't work, then I will be more than happy to say, yeah, it didn't work. I can see what they might have been trying to do here, but it ultimately didn't work. With people making a mountain out of a molehill because of how they changed Chani right here, is them, I think, reacting too instinctively, being too burned by all of the bad adaptations and what they perceive to be wokeness, rather than actually taking a step back to say, this is what's happening right here with the story. I see what's happening right here, and now I'm going to judge it on whether or not that was a good change, and compare that to why in the book, the way Chani's character was originally written, why I feel that was better. That is a good discussion to have, and that's unfortunately a discussion that's not being had. So I'm saying my bit right here. There we go. My bit has been said. Let's have a look at what else has been written here, because Rubens has been sharing quite a bit of history for us right here. So picking up with the book that was banned in 1912 for being too pro-imperial. Ironically, the Republic didn't actually ban it for being way too offensive. They banned it because it was being too political. And politics doth offend. To be fair, our Republic back then was just being racist or anti-monarchist for the slightest of reasons, so we should have seen this coming. And also, this guy, apparently, he killed a dead man. This dude deserves some credit for breaking the laws of biology. I do this every day, though. I'd win. ISO, classic, people being upset for the smallest of reasons. Yeah, unfortunately. And I mean, and I'll say this, like, I've been there, and people can go back and they can look at some of the things that I have said, for instance, about Rings of Power. Now then, I definitely tore into Rings of Power. However, again, if you actually go through and watch my reviews for Rings of Power and actually my videos leading up to Rings of Power, I actually try to give Rings of Power the benefit of the doubt because I wanted it to be good. I wanted more Lord of the Rings, and I had high hopes that it could be good. And I even did a video on this is how I would approach it, because I think there's merit to some of the changes that they want to do. And it could really bring out more of Sauron's character. And we could introduce some interesting characters. We cover so much of the Second Age and do all these really cool things and cover all these amazing stories and spawn great spin-offs. So much potential. Unfortunately, so much potential wasted. And even while that potential is being wasted, I tried in each segment to say, okay, then as an original story, this is what they did right and what they did wrong. As an adaptation, this is what they did right and this is what they did wrong. And try to give it the benefit of the doubt. Unfortunately, it gave me way more doubts than it gave me benefits. So you can rant and rave about the stuff that you don't like, but I think it's also important to point out the things that you do and to give a story the benefit of the doubt and see what the adaptation is trying to do and judge it on its own merit of whether it succeeded or not. So that's my take. Rubens, I hate Rubens. March 1st, 2024. It is a great and horrible quote. Rubens seems pretty much like cinemas during Star Wars sequel. It seems pretty much like cinemas during Star Wars sequel. Not going to lie, seeing Luke in Episode 8 was painful. Yes. Oh, man. There's so much to say about the lost potential of the sequel trilogy. I was so excited. And the thing is that, again, like, I feel kind of bad because when so many other Star Wars fans were getting really upset that Disney decanonized the extended universe, I said I was in favor of that just because it would give Disney a chance to say, hey, look, these are the stories that we're going to tell. And I had expected that they would pick and choose out of the extended universe the stories that they felt would fit best for the story that they wished to tell. And I kept saying, okay, then, well, let's see where this goes. So the 7th movie ended so open-ended. And I was like, I liked a lot of things, but there's a lot of things that could go really wrong. Let's see where Episode 8 goes. Episode 8 arrived. When I was sitting in the theater watching it, I loved it. The moment I walked out with my family, I was like, wow, did you remember that scene where it's like, oh, that scene was stupid. But then, never mind, there was that one scene where, oh, that scene was bad. Well, when Luke did, oh, what Luke said was awful. But that final battle, oh, wait, that battle was awful. And then I began to realize, like, did I not like this movie? I went back and watched it. I was like, oh, this is so horrible. But maybe it can be redeemed in the 9th movie. And I went in hoping that it would work. I spent the entire time in that theater with my sister and her husband laughing our heads off at the 9th movie because it was so bad. And that's where no fan wants to be, where you're mocking something that you once loved. And so with people who have been through that, like, I can understand why there are people who are upset with how Dune Part 2 has kind of turned out, or at least in their minds has turned out. But I'm just going to say, it's gorgeous. It is such a beautiful film. I love what they do with the characters. I love the psychedelicness. It's great seeing a serious Christopher Walken. He is great as the Emperor. Even though he doesn't say or do much, he is sinister on the screen. He is so good. The acting is absolutely phenomenal. Timothée Chalamet really showed his acting chops in this movie. And while I know that there's people who don't like Zendaya as an actor, I thought that she did actually a pretty good job, especially as the skeptic, to challenge Paul throughout the story. The battles were phenomenal. And this is something that, as someone who loves writing combat, one of the things I loved is that every single fight in this movie is shown and happens for a reason. It makes sense why it's there. The execution of those battles is done well. And on top of that, every battle has a consequence. There's no action purely for the sake of action. And that's actually what makes a good action scene, when it is well set up with where you understand why the characters are fighting each other. What are they fighting each other for? What do they bring to the table? Well, and then you get to see the action played out. And if it's done well, fantastic. But what really makes it then memorable is that those moments of action, they mattered. If the fights don't matter, if a fight happens, but then there's really no lasting consequences after it, why is it there? You can pull it off. There are instances where you can pull it off, but they don't usually work. And I will toot my own horn right here, actually. When writing my first novel, Knights of Hallicruz, there's one chapter where I introduced my character kind of in his glory. Like, you get to see him briefly just before this moment. We then go to the main characters. They do their thing, and then when we return to Lagerblad, this character is totally epic. When he shows up, he comes into this village that's been taken over by a bunch of bandits, and he acts all cool and nonchalant until they start giving him a bad time, and then he just murders them in brutal fashion, like nailing a guy's head to the counter of a bar with a knife. That he doesn't grab and put his head down and put the knife in. He hurls the knife so hard that it goes through the guy's skull and then pins him to the counter. Stuff like that. And so you have this fight. He's done. He's freed the village, and he's like, "I'm moving on. I got a guy I got to kill." And he just walks off, and everyone's like, "What are we going to do now?" He's like, "That's up to you to figure out." So in that scene right there, that there's no real lasting consequences because this village is never returned to. These people never come back to try to get revenge on this guy. Like, it's a fight that in many ways shouldn't work. However, for everyone that I've talked to who has read it, and one of the reasons why I myself kept it in was because it was such a poignant chapter that this guy who seems very well-mannered, very respectable, could unleash so much fury in one go and just absolutely annihilate these guys as if it was nothing. That tells you as the reader, this guy is dangerous. You need to watch out for this guy. When he says he's going to go and kill Lord Andrew, he means it. And oh boy, Lord Andrew better be ready for when this guy shows up, because he is intense. And that was what I wanted to get across with that action scene. If you tried to do that for every single one of your characters, it would get really old real fast. So that's an example of knowing the rules in order to break the rules, but you can only break the rules so many times before it just becomes stupid. All right. So coming around to some of the comments right here from ISO. All I get now is basically a habitual bias. They got into the habit of hating these adaptations, so that's the automatic response. Exactly. And I mean, here's the thing. I think it's built into so many of us at this point that so many adaptations have not worked out well, especially from cartoon to live action, that we just assume it's going to suck. And unfortunately, there's a lot of history to prove that. But again, still, for any story that you wish to watch, you should try to remove as much bias as possible and just enjoy it for what it is. And if it's not enjoyable, you explain why it isn't enjoyable. And then we can have a good conversation going right there. From Rubens, Brazilian cinema has some questionable choice of preferences. Like, what's better, a novel or an elite troop movie set to show the brutality and destruction of the cartel wars? Guess what we chose? I'm going to say that you went with that the cinema went with a movie that showed the brutality and destruction of the cartel wars. Oh boy. Again, I one of these days I'll need to make my way down to Brazil, Rubens. My brother-in-law, who's over in Brazil, he once had an experience. I need to get the full story from him for this, where he was traveling along in the jungle somewhere. Suddenly the military showed up. They boarded the bus and they're like, "Okay, everyone, we're doing a routine check. No worries. We're just checking things out. Guns are going to people's faces." And like, okay, move on. The bus goes around the corner, and then the cartels jump the bus, and they're like, "Okay, everyone, we're checking to make sure that there's no military police here." Guns in everyone's faces. "Okay, you're all good. Move along." And the bus just moves along, and he's like, "Whoa, what just happened here?" So I think Rubens, you and he would have some stuff to talk about. Not that I think you've ever gone through that, but based on what I'm suspecting is the movie that was shown in the cinema, I think you two would have some things to chat about. Anyways, moving on to ISO. and that's a recency bias. I thought I loved the Rise of Skywalker, but I really didn't. Yeah, and that happens. And it's okay. It's okay to at one point have liked a movie and then not to like it later on. For me, a good example of that would actually be watching the Avatar movie done by James Cameron, not the one with the Last Airbender, but the Blue Aliens. I loved that movie so much. I actually have the extended edition of the movie, which actually works way better than the original. And I really enjoyed it. I love the music. I love the characters and everything. But especially when I started spending more time learning how to write and starting to write my own stories, I came to realize just how lazy and nonsensical James Cameron's Avatar movies actually are. They are beautiful spectacles, and I will absolutely give him credit for that. They're just really bad stories. Rubens, somehow Camille's harem has returned. I know, we have returned. Rubens, this happens a lot. It's because of things like MST, PCC, etc. They claim to be liberation movements if you go to their sites, but it's actually just cartel shenanigans. Well, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that that's the kind of stuff that that your country has to deal with right there. It is what it is, and I hope that Brazil can figure that stuff out, because yeah, we hear in the States. I live on the border. It's not as bad as the news always tries to make it out to be, but there are cartel corridors, and all kinds of shenaniganery moves up through those corridors. And there's certain areas here in Arizona that are not safe for you to go to if you stumble upon those particular sites along the border. It's the way it is. We got to figure out a way of solving it, and that's for people who know way more than me to figure out. So, unless you guys have anything you wish to ask me about Dune, it seems like I've been the one here soapboxing, and that's okay. I've had my say. Adaptations are hard. It's all about taking the story from whatever medium it once was and adapting it into the new medium that you wish to have it in, whether that be books, comics, a show, an animated series, a live action series. Whatever the medium is, things are going to change as you adapt them. And that actually that actually leads me. I can now use that as a segue to talk about anime. Yay, anime! Let's return to Lars getting his butt kicked by the Night Riders. So, talking about the adaptations for anime. This is an anime that isn't yet premiering, but it's one I'm really, really looking forward to, and not just for the plentiful amount of opie in that series, but there's a lot of really interesting stuff in there, especially for a writer, and it is Mysteries, Maidens, and Mysterious Disappearances. That's been its translated title for a long time. I do believe that they are going to change that title they're going to change it in part for the animated series when it premieres next month. It's going to premiere in April. And I'm very interested in seeing how they adapt it right there, because if you read the manga, Maidens, Mysteries, and Mysterious Disappearances, again, lots of opie is lots of plot is in the manga, if you know what I'm saying. The anime, as of right now, if you watch the trailers, does not give you any hint that could be the case. That there will be plentiful amounts of plot in the anime adaptation, and if there isn't, I can actually understand why. Because the real worth of something like Mysteries, Maidens, and Mysterious Disappearances is the adventure that the main character goes on. She is a novice author, like so many of us, who is trying to get her career off the ground, but she's failing. She only ever got one book published, which, I mean, hey, good for her. She got a book published, and she got it published traditionally, which is better than I can say, because all the books that I've published have been self-published. So good on her. But so she's hit a snag. She's not been able to get any other books published, and in fact, all other agents and publishers are now actively rejecting her work because they just don't like what kinds of stories she has to tell. They're like, oh, you are behind the times. You don't really understand what it means to be a good writer. You don't understand characters. You can't bring your world to life. And they've got all these different things that they're saying about her, about why they won't pick up her books. So as a result of that, she's lost all confidence in herself. She now works at a bookstore, and she says that she's writing, but she can never bring herself to write. Instead, she drowns her sorrows of not being published anymore, or not getting any more publishing gigs. She drowns her sorrows in beer and books. And so she buys a bunch of cheap books from the bookstore. She comes home, she starts reading them, and she gets drunk while she's reading. So that's what she's doing with her life. And it's only when one of her coworkers hands her a book that has been drop lifted, as they call it, rather than being stolen from the shop. These people have left a book behind for someone to pick up or shelf because they just don't want it anymore. They're being lazy, right, and not going through the process of donating it. But as they come to learn, this book is magical, and so when she gets the book, she starts reading it, and she's like, "Oh, this is interesting." And there's some mystery to the book. It takes some deciphering, and she's kind of getting into it. And as she reads the book casts a spell on her, which is going to change her. And that is the beginning of the story for Mysteries, Maidens, and Mysterious Disappearances. And I'm interested in seeing how they adapt it. How deep are they going to go? Because the manga actually has quite a bit of detail about how hard it is to get picked up and be a published author. It has a lot of detail in those kinds of difficulties. And oh man, my mind's going blank. Not just the difficulties, but what those difficulties will do to an author. How it just wrings them dry. That's actually like that's almost a full chapter of the manga, is the main character just being wrung dry by how hard it is to get published. And so I wonder how much of that is going to be shown in the anime adaptation. Will the anime adaptation have the generous amounts of plot that are there in the story? Will the anime try to dodge the somewhat uncomfortable relationship between the two main characters, where one character is definitely older than the other? So I'm interested in seeing how they will do it. Unfortunately, the budget for Mysteries, Maidens, and Mysterious Disappearances does not look like it's as big as like I would have hoped, because there's moments in the manga that are just fantastically creepy and huge in scale, really truly epic, that I think would be fantastic to see fully animated. And I don't know what's going to happen there. So I bring that up as just showing that like what's going to happen. Are they just going to focus on the whole like mysteries element? Is there going to be any focus on the promiscuous stuff like there is in the manga? Will the anime have a lot of those bigger details about how hard the industry is, like what we get in the manga? Or will they feel like that's just going to take too much away from the flow of the story? It'll be very interesting to see how that all plays out. Coming here to Rubens. Meanwhile, the guy riding the horse on the video playing, in Russia, we are physics. Yes, I'm breaking all the rules of physics, and I'm definitely probably driving a few people insane with how long it took me to beat the Night Riders right there. ISO, that's when self publishing comes into play. Wait, is this the one with the blood that bursts from her body or something? Yes, it is the one that when she starts reading the book and it casts the spell on her, it allows her to become young again, or at least in appearance become young again. But the thing is, this is that all of her blood and her guts remain adult. So all of that gorgeously curved adult body has just been shoved into a little girl, and it starts bursting out of her, out of all of her different orifices and the likes, and it is pretty graphic. So it'll be interesting to see again how the anime handles that. I think that, generally speaking, anime studios these days are getting to the point where they're feeling way more comfortable in showing a lot more of that kind of stuff. It's not like the early 2000s where they really tried to like hold back on the gratuitous gore. Like you would have to watch something like Bleach to get the pool's worth of blood coming out of every single character. But they kind of returned to the free form of the 80s and 90s, where they're like, if we're going to do brutal stuff or have gratuitous sexiness, we're going to do that. They've kind of gotten over their self-editing phase, which was the early 2000s. For myself, I beat the knights with ranged combat. I just hurled black fireballs until they died. Respectable. The night riders are so freaking hard, especially early on in the game. So I know exactly how that goes. And man, this particular part of the map right here, being out in the frozen lands near the giants, woof! Oh boy, that was rough. That was really, really rough. I still actually have not defeated the Death Bird in this particular area yet. I'm too much of a coward because Death Birds are hard. So I found that the guard counter works well for most of them. Yeah, if you're good with being able to block at the right time, you can really stagger a lot of those characters and just bring them down real fast. You open up all kinds of cheap shots, and I mean, I'll admit that's how I defeated Melania. I defeated Melania by cheesing her. I used the 3-finger tower shield, put bleed on it, made a mimic, and then sandwiched Melania between the mimic and myself, and then just doubled the amount of bleed. And the first phase lasted 30 seconds. The second phase lasted about 40 seconds. And boom, she was done. Mostly through the shield. So yeah, cheese works. Ghost Flame can do some amazing stuff if you use it right. So so that being said, coming back to anime, I don't know how many of you guys have been watching Delicious in Dungeon. If you haven't, I highly recommend it. Oh boy, I have been loving watching Delicious in Dungeon. And the funny thing is this, I've been watching, I think I've said this before, but I've been watching all of it in German, all because of something I saw I saw this in a YouTube short where someone's like, oh man, Delicious in Dungeon in German is just on another level. I watched like this one clip of the elf girl just like wigging out in German. I was like, oh, that's funny. I'll try that out, and started watching in German. Holy cow, it is a completely other experience watching in German. The German voice actors are phenomenal. I got to give them that. But Delicious in Dungeon, if you haven't seen it yet, is phenomenal. It's such a good take on Dungeons and Dragons, with the twist being how important food is, and how food is a way of getting to know characters, how food is a motivation for characters, how food is a way of exploring more about the world. There's so many things that you can do with food. And that's an aspect of D&D, like of playing D&D. A lot of players don't actually like to get into that aspect of D&D because they think it's too boring. They think it just takes up time. But food is a great way of getting to know characters, getting to know the world, getting to know about cultures. And of course, if you meet in person with D&D, no one's going to say no to you making a fantastic meal for them because everyone's hungry while playing. It just always happens. Everyone's always snacking while playing. Um, and that's but when it comes to, again, to just using food in D&D, the exact same thing goes for writing your own stories. Food can be a great way to express cultures, express aspects of the world, to explore what people can do within this world. What kinds of medicines can be had? What kinds of skills are developed by hunting your own food? What can you learn about a character through their favorite meal? And all these things. Or, I mean, how many, and oftentimes when people have meals, there's a chance for characters to interact with each other, to have conversations. There's so much that you can do with food. And I think Delicious in Dungeon almost exists primarily to prove the point that, yeah, food is important in storytelling. Let's properly use it. I've been watching the new episodes as they come out. Yeah, I'll say it's for everyone and anyone. Delicious in Dungeon is absolutely worth watching. It's so unique. It's fun, and I think that really, excuse me, for any D&D player, if you don't like using food in your own campaigns, I think Delicious in Dungeon will convince you that using food as an element of storytelling and character development and world building is absolutely worth it. And plus it's a great story, and I love how it sprinkles all of these different plot elements throughout, like when the main character, I'm blanking on his name, Laios, when Laios goes into the paintings because the paintings have food in them, and he's like, it's magical paintings, the paintings try to like suck you in and eat you. I'm going to go into the paintings because the paintings have food. I'm going to eat the food that the paintings have, and so he goes and he does that. It's such a funny scene. It's played up for laughs, but if you're paying attention, you're actually getting some really important world building stuff happening in the background, and also some big stuff for why the dungeon is the way it is, potentially. Myself, that scene made me genuinely sad. Yeah, there's definitely some emotion right there. Excuse me. To that scene. There's just, and I love with the most recent episode with them making good with their dwarf fighter companion again, and how a meal is what brings them together, but they don't immediately kiss and make up and become friends again over that one meal. They have to go through a little bit more. I gotta go through some more hardship and the likes. But then again, food is what brings them together, where they can finally reconcile as a party. And I really enjoyed that. I thought that was really excellent plot progression and character development, with food being an engine for that development. That's good stuff. It made you sad because the food kept disappearing. I mean, I felt bad for the prince, seeing what was happening with the prince. But yes, Laios was definitely really suffering, the poor guy, from hunger. And I called it before it happened, when he comes out of the painting after gorging himself, and then all that food's gone, so he's back to being absolutely starved again. I love that. I was laughing so hard. But yeah, Delicious in Dungeon, that's going on so well. And Studio Trigger just absolutely bringing their A game. Fun little side note, I actually introduced my parents to Delicious in Dungeon, and they watched it. So hey, it's for all ages. But let's see here. Another fun anime episode from this week was Villainous Level 99. She finally has her dragon. Good for Yumellia. I am going to follow through with what I said I would do. I put that as a poll some weeks back about whether or not I should do a video about the art of the girl boss scene. I do intend to do that. I have most of the materials to make that video happen. And one of the things that I like with with a villainous level 99 is that while there are definitely some good girl boss moments in the series also knows well enough to not oversaturate the story with those moments. I mean, Yumellia is still showing everyone up with just how freaking powerful she is and all the things that she can do. However, it's important to note, actually, that she's not simply owning everyone else at every single turn along the way. She has to learn still and grow, and she's making tons of social mistakes along the way, which are piling up in terms of consequences. And it's lucky that she has a guy like Patrick who's in love with her, and that she has an airhead for a friend like what's her bucket, the other noble girl. If it wasn't for that, she would be totally isolated by her choices and actions thus far in the story. And she herself kind of understands that as well. And so it's great that we get some girl boss moments that allow her to actually kind of take her place at the academy and do her own thing. However, not every episode has a girl boss moment, because if that were the case, it would get really old real quick, and it would feel like the story's trying to force on us that Yumellia is so awesome and you must love Yumellia. And if that were the case, then you actually wouldn't love her, because she would become overbearing. She wouldn't be fun anymore. And so that is an aspect of the whole girl boss moment. You can't have the girl boss be the girl boss all the time, because then they just don't become quite as relatable. They come across as overbearing. It's just too much. If you want it to work out well, you have to show them who they genuinely are, and then you use the girl boss moment for when she has to assert herself in the right kind of situation, or she has to push back against the villain, or she's been mistreated all this time and enough is enough, or someone goes against her best friend and she has to then step in and put an end to it all. That is where the girl boss moment should be used. So that's my little thing right there. ISO again. My dad introduced me to Delicious in Dungeon. Hey, that's awesome. That's really, really cool. I hope he's also been watching it with you, or at least is watching it concurrent with you. Because yeah, it's nice to have someone that you can chat with about a show like that. Yum. I have to take another bite of food because it's been a while. My soup is a little bit cold and I'm hungry. ISO. Sorry, I can't relate to perfection. Yeah, exactly. And I'm also going to throw this out here. I actually don't like it when people talk about how characters need to how the audience needs to relate to a certain character, how a character is being crafted just to be relatable. I think that it's far more important to make each character their own individual, make them their own person, and then give them struggles and traits that are relatable. So, for instance, throughout all of fiction that I have seen, there is no character that actually represents me, Lars. There's no character that I'm like, oh my gosh, I see myself. Like, they look like me and they act like me. I have never seen any character like that in fiction, neither in books or in shows or in movies. I just haven't seen it. And in a way, I don't really need or want to see it. I am totally fine with seeing all these other characters that are not like me, that are doing their own thing, but that they might be nerdy like I am. Or maybe they have a family like I do. Or maybe they're going through a struggle like I am. Or they're kind. Or they're determined. Things I'm like, yeah, I like that. That is then okay. I don't need to see myself as myself on the big screen or on the pages of a book. I want to see actual characters that have relatable elements or relatable problems to mine. But they don't need to be me, and they don't need to be living my life, and they don't need to be making my story. The closest that I've seen any fictional character being to like me is if you watch the elevator scene from The Secret Life of Walter Mitty. That elevator scene is what basically goes through my head if I ever have to deal with an annoying coworker. I loved that scene because that's absolutely 100% me in my head. My imagination is crazy. It is quick. It is brutal. It is all over the place, and I will have all that and that kind of stuff will be playing out right before my very eyes as I'm talking to people. The only other character that has also been somewhat relatable to me, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's me, is in the second Lego movie, the evil Chris Pratt, who has all of the raptor friends. When I saw that, I was like, oh my gosh, that's me. I love velociraptors. And if you read The Legend of the Ten Lords in that series, one of the characters has a bunch of loyal velociraptor servants and soldiers. And so I'm like, oh yes, someone else gets me. But beyond those two things, I have not seen or read any character that's like Lars, that's like me. And that's okay. Because I don't need to see myself. People want to see great characters. They want to read great characters who have relatable elements. And Yumellia is a fun character because the things that make her relatable are her social awkwardness, are her social awkwardness, how she is unable to communicate with people sometimes. That's something that a lot of people can relate to at one point or another in their lives. And so it's okay. Hey, I'm not a woman. I'm not a black-haired woman. I'm not Japanese, and nor have I ever been isekai'd, I think. And I don't need, and that's okay. I can still really like Yumellia as a character because of her other qualities and just for enjoying the fun adventure that she's going on. So in my own books, my character is an honor-bound leader, but after he made a mistake that got his friend killed, he started doubting himself, causing problems for others with his indecision. Yeah, and I mean, hopefully other people don't read that and are like, oh yeah, I remember when I got my friend killed, because yeesh. But a lot of people can relate to indecision. They can relate to personal doubt. They can relate to making mistakes that have horrible consequences on their life, far beyond that one moment of regret and mistake. That's just happened to so many of us, unfortunately. And it's good to see a story where a character is grappling with that, and to see how that character might face and hopefully overcome those kinds of challenges. And so that can be really good. And I'm guessing, ISO, to what you said right there, I love that scene. It's extremely relatable that you're referring to the elevator scene from The Secret Life of Walter Mitty. Oh man, that was fun. I went and saw that one with one of my sisters, and it was fun seeing that movie and being able to talk about it and be all like, hey, that's kind of what goes through my head sometimes. And just her laughing at me for it. Well, let's see here to start rounding things off, because I do have more work, and I also wish to fully be able to enjoy my food and not just steal a bite here or there. Let's see here in terms of anime. I mean, I've already talked at length in the other videos about The Dangers in My Heart, and also, of course, The Apothecary Diaries. Both fantastic stories. If you haven't been watching them, I highly recommend The Apothecary Diaries and The Dangers in My Heart. Such great stories. And there was actually more chapters that were released recently. Some Twitter stuff in the chapter that were released for The Dangers in My Heart. And I'm looking forward to reading that when I have the chance. So that's going to be fun. I need to catch up with The Witch and the Beast, which I've still been absolutely enjoying as I've been reading it. Just a great, good, brutal anime that with its own unique take on witches and its investigations and the likes. Which again, I've really enjoyed that. And let's see here. Yeah, what else? What else is there? There's other anime that I need to catch up with. I still need to catch up completely with Frieren Beyond Journey's End, and also I need to catch up with Undead Unluck, because Undead Unluck is definitely a story that I eventually kind of want to do a video on if possible. There was a long while back, and actually I believe I removed this video because it was blocked in all regions, but I did a video a long while back on the anime Fooly Cooly and how it handles a completely insane premise where it's so bonkers off the wall. And how do you even translate that on over to the written word? And I think it's actually kind of a good thing that video got blocked and got taken down, because that was one of our way earlier videos. It definitely didn't hold up in terms of quality or discussion material. So I think it'd be fun to retackle that with Undead Unluck, because that's another really bonkers one, and then maybe even then use that as kind of a lead into Fooly Cooly, because Fooly Cooly is just it's so good. I haven't watched the third season of Fooly Cooly. I was really disappointed with the second season of Fooly Cooly. I think the first season of Fooly Cooly is just absolute lightning in a bottle, because it's so dang good. It's so funny and it's so deep. There's so much happening in Fooly Cooly that's actually like really, really smart. And one of the funny things about it is that Fooly Cooly actually makes fun of Neon Genesis Evangelion for it being like so smart, where they're all like, yeah, like stories that are just so smart that you never get them. Wild, man. And they're like, yeah, that's the kind of story that everyone wants these days. And so Fooly Cooly is everything opposite of Neon Genesis Evangelion, where Fooly Cooly actually does have a romantic story that you don't have to feel too awkward about. Fooly Cooly is hilarious. Its animation is ridiculous. Its battles are through the roof. It's so different from Neon Genesis Evangelion, and it kind of pokes fun at it repeatedly for being so smart. It's like, yeah, people should just have like the dumb stories, you know? You need the dumb stuff every now and then. And then at the end of the anime, you then realize, holy cow, I was just fed this super in-depth, really crazy story that was super symbolic about coming of age and going through puberty. And it works so dang well. Oh man, Fooly Cooly. That is an art that's lost. That's lost to us today. I'm thankful for my friends who introduced me to that insane story. I got into the manga of Undead Unluck, and then the anime was immediately announced. Hey, let's see here. I don't think I started reading the manga for Undead Unluck until Scott and I started doing our preview for the upcoming season, and that's when I started getting into it. I still need to that's another one I need to catch up with. I'm so busy with so many things that it's difficult to have that time again to just like spend 4 or 5 hours and just enjoy a bunch of manga. Because I have to get so much writing done, so much editing done, doing videos, taking care of stuff around the house, working out, It's difficult to fit all that stuff into just a mere 24 hours, and and not kill yourself on like 3 hours of sleep. I gotta get more than 3 hours of sleep. I'm not 17 years old anymore. I could do it then. I can't do it now. But yeah, so that's pretty much it. Right there. I think I got all of my grandstanding, pontificating, soapboxing out of the way. I am now cool, calm, and collected as far as Dune Part 2 is concerned. And again, I highly recommend watching the new Dune movies because they are fantastic. And I recommend, probably actually even more so, Delicious in Dungeon because it's such a wild ride. And because I talked actually quite a bit earlier about mysteries, maidens, and mysterious disappearances, if you want to get a jump start on that particular story before it is released in April, then I highly recommend checking it out. There's going to actually be a new official English translation of the manga released, I believe, either this month or next month. Excuse me, that people can start buying in bookstores. And for anyone who is interested, since people have been asking me about this, yes, Wakfu Season 4 is underway. It is fantastic. I am really loving the final season of Wakfu. The unfortunate thing is, you can only right now watch Wakfu if you're in France or if you are a backer for the fourth season. I was a backer. I backed it to the producer level, so I actually have a producer's hat. Woohoo! And now I get to watch my money there on the screen, and it is fantastic. They went in a very different direction than where I thought they would go after the third season. I think that they realized that they went maybe a little too dark and heavy in the third season. So the fourth season of Wakfu has way more levity to it, a lot more adventuring and humor. However, there are still some insanely deep elements. There's some great character drama. There's been some fantastic battles, and I really, really love the enemy that Yugo is right now going up against, because it is so different from everything else. I think a lot of people were hoping that the Macasms would show up, and they still might show up because we're only halfway through the season thus far. But the Macasms, so yeah, right now the Macasms aren't the main enemy. It's a new enemy, which is a stasis-based necromantic society. Oh, it is so good. Oh boy! And I actually called one of the twists pretty early on. And here's the thing: it's okay if you call a twist early on. Like, I hate it when people say, "Oh my gosh, I kind of knew what was coming, and now I can't enjoy it as much." I loved seeing the twist that I called for season 4 because it was done really, really well. If you know that a twist is coming, it's okay if the twist is still done well. And oh boy, I'm not going to spoil that twist, but I loved seeing it, and I am so excited to see where they go with it, because it's going to be a real challenge for Yugo and the others. Tevin, good evening. Unfortunately, you're hopping in right as I'm beginning to wrap things up right here, because I need to eat and get back to writing and taking care of other things. So unfortunately, we'll be wrapping up here real soon. So I can be in France right now, only with NordVPN. This is not a sponsorship. Yeah. Thinking of sponsorships, I am hoping that we'll soon get up to 10,000 subscribers. You don't need 10,000 subscribers to actually get a sponsorship, But my hope is that with 10,000 subs and with some videos of ours having done really well, that we'll be able to then take that to potential sponsors and be like, hey, like people really like our stuff, and we would love to do this more full time. If you support us right here, and give us some monies, we'll share the word about your product, and everyone can go home happy. Yay! But that's for us right now to worry about and try to figure out hopefully in the near future. But otherwise, guys, thank you so much for joining me tonight for the reviews, for the ramblings, for talking about adaptations and the likes. Hopefully, I will have my rant about Avatar: The Last Airbender out soon for you all to either enjoy or to tear into. Either way is just fine with me. And hope that you all take care of yourselves. Thank you so much for being here, for chatting up and for chatting things up with me. And until the next time, y'all, this has been Camille's Harem, and thank you for joining us on this incredible adventure we call writing. And tschüss.